Hello, welcome to Adam Swartz Popits presents The Bells.
Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells.
Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight. From the molten golden notes, all in tune, what a ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells! How it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells.
Hear the loud alarm bells, brazen bells. What tale of terror now their turbulency tells. In the shattered ear of night, how they scream out their fright. Too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek, out of tune, in a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and the frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavor now to sit, or never, by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, 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 what a tale their terror tells of despair, how they clang and clash and roar. What a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet the ear, it fully knows, by the twanging and the clanging, how the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the ear distinctly tells, in the jangling and the wrangling, how the danger sinks and swells, by the sinking or the swelling in the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 in the clamor and the clangor of the bells.
Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells! What a world of solemn thought their monody compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy meaning of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan. And the people, ah, the people, they that dwell up in the steeple, all alone, and who tolling, 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 in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls! And their king it is who tolls as he rolls, 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 a paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells, and he dances and he yells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the paean of the bells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the throbbing of the bells, bells, to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, 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 as he knells, 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 in a happy runic rhyme to the rolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and the groaning of the bells.
Excuse me? Hello? Excuse me, anybody here? Hi, my name is Miss Bell.
Ah!
I'm sorry, I was just ringing the doorbell.
Ah!
Sorry, I was wondering if anybody wanted to get some tacos
Ooh. Where?
from Taco Bell.
Ah!
I'm terribly sorry, excuse me.
Hello. Welcome to Adam Swartz Popit's The Bells.
Oh, hi everybody. We need to start over.
All right.
Sorry.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Poe 2020. And a big thank you to Adam Swartz Puppets and Adam Swartz and Kathy Morrow for bringing us that wonderful little piece to start us off. I think one of my favorite parts are always outtakes, but it's the top of Adam's forehead that you can just see at the very end. And Laura, of course, who's always adorable. And you'll get to meet her a little later. Kathy's here with us tonight, and so is Michael. And so at first, I'm going to ask all the company to just turn on their videos and wave at everyone. So here they come. And we have Elizabeth Bagley, Bruce Klaus, Stephanie Gates, John Vickers-Jones, Kathy Morrow, Laura Riley, Joanne Smith, Laura Waldier, Mike Waldier, and our special guest is Adam Swartz Puppets. And to my left, even though I don't know where he is on your screen, is Jim Colbert, who will be co-hosting, and I'm Cynthia. So welcome to Tempest Productions, and it is our third annual, fourth annual, fifth annual, who knows, celebration of Poe's works. And because we can't be in person this year, we're going to do this in various readings. So you'll meet all of these guys again throughout the evening. They'll be sharing and doing other pieces. A number of our pieces come from the Edgar Allan Poe Poetry for Young Audiences book. And we're hoping that we get some middle school and some high school students out there who might share and read with us a little later. We'll talk about some of the events that we have online that you can do in our virtual rooms. And we'll get to meet some more puppets at some point. There's lots going on. And we have Poe Trivia coming up pretty soon. So I think we're going to start there. The prizes, if you win Poe Trivia, are a little finger Poe puppet, a deck of cards that has Poe quotes on it, and, oh, see, Poe bandages. Mike's like, whoa, look, where are they, right? Then my favorite part about the Poe puppet, it's a magnet. It can go in your refrigerator. See, even the company didn't know this, right? And they are wrapped in plastic. You're not getting the one from my refrigerator. Okay, just so we're clear about that. So we'll be keeping score all night for you. Facebook is a little bit behind us. We are streaming live. So we'll be keeping tallies in both places. And our first Poe Trivia question, and you can type your answers right in the chat box for us. So our first question is going to be, Poe published his first book at age 18, and it was called, who out there knows? Anyone out there? My company's not allowed to play. They're like, no, we want to. We know the answer. Or maybe they don't. Anyone in chat? And I'll monitor Facebook as well. If we get any, Mike's making faces now. How many screens can I look at one time? It is Tamerlane. All right, we'll go to another question. How about, what did Poe call himself? In a number of letters, he signed it, not Edgar, not Alan, but anyone know? Anyone out there want to throw it in chat? I like Boz. Not quite the right answer, but I like the answer. Anyone else? Yes, no, maybe. I'll follow up here on Facebook in a few minutes. And the answer is Eddie. He went by Eddie. So actually, he was a pretty nice guy. Played some sports. We'll talk about that later. That's another one of our trivia questions. And was an all-around good guy. People liked him, right? Then we know all of his work slightly differently. So coming up first, we have Annabel Lee, Spirits of the Dead, Valley of the Unrest with John Vickers Jones, Kathy Mara, and Laura Waldeer. Enjoy.
It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee, with a love that winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long, long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that a high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea.
Spirits of the dead. Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the gray tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude, which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before thee are again in death around thee, and their will shall overshadow thee. Be still. The night, though clear, shall frown, and the stars shall not look down from their high thrones in the heaven, with light like hope to mortals given, but their red orbs, without beam, to thy weariness shall seem as a burning and a fever, which would cling to thee forever. Now our thoughts thou shalt not banish, now our visions ne'er to vanish, from thy spirit shall they pass no more, like dewdrop from the grass. The breeze, the breath of God, is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy, shadowy yet unbroken, is a symbol and a token, how it hangs upon the trees, a mystery of mysteries.
The Valley of Unrest. Once it smiled, a silent dell where the people did not dwell. They had gone into the wars, trusting to the mild-eyed stars. Nightly from their azure towers to keep watch above the flowers, in the midst of which all day the red sunlight lazily lay. Now each visitor shall confess the sad valley's restlessness. Nothing there is motionless, nothing save the airs that brood o'er the magic solitude. Ah, by no wind are stirred those trees that palpitate like the chilled seas around the misty Hybrides. Ah, by no wind those clouds are driven that rustle through the unquiet heaven uneasily from morn till even. Over the violets there that lie in myriad types of the human eye, over 3 lilies there that wave and weep above a nameless grave. They wave, from out their fragrant tops eternal dews come down in drops. They weep, from off their delicate stems perennial tears descend in gems.
Oh, that was lovely. So we remember to unmute the microphone, but we forget to mute the speaker. Lovely work. One of the things I really enjoy is Poe's use of the English language. Just wonderful. We do have more Poe trivia for you, and we have valuable prizes, as you know, like the Poe finger puppet magnet. So if not just on your finger, but if you have a metal plate in your head, it would stick to it. I don't, so it won't. But Poe trivia, without further ado. At what age did Edgar Poe become Edgar Allan Poe? At what age did Edgar Poe become Edgar Allan Poe? Remember, if you're a participant, cast is not eligible to participate per the boss. Are you checking Facebook? We're trying. What age did Edgar Poe become Edgar Allan Poe? Oh, one answer, that's a little high.
Think back to when he was orphaned.
We gonna wrap this one up, Cynthia? All right. Cynthia says to wrap it up. I do like -10, but no, a little too far back. At what age did Edgar Poe become Edgar Allan Poe? 3 years old when he was adopted then, Cynthia. So yeah. Do we want to do one more? All right, let's do one more. We'll give this a shot as well. About a month before his death, Poe joined what organization to combat his alcoholism? So about a month before his death, Poe joined what organization to combat his alcoholism? Close. That would be the modern. Oh, Christy Bagley. Yes. So the technical name is, so at about a month before his death, Poe joined what organization to combat his alcoholism? The answer is Sons of Temperance. So Christy Bagley is the lucky winner of valuable prizes like a Poe finger puppet / magnet or Edgar Allan Poe bandages. Just the thing for your contusions. I'm being told to keep things moving along here by our boss. Coming up next, we're going to hear For Annie from Bruce Clough, Dreamland by Laura Riley, Dreams by Joanne Smith, and The Conqueror Worm read by Stephanie Gates. And we'll be back with more trivia shortly.
For Annie. Thank heaven the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last. Sadly, I know I am shorn of my strength, and no muscle I move as I lie at full length, but no matter, I feel I am better at length. And I rest so composedly now in my bed that any beholder might fancy me dead, might start at beholding me, thinking me dead. The moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now with that horrible throbbing at heart, or that horrible, horrible throbbing, the sickness, the nausea, the pitiless pain have ceased. With that fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain. And oh, of all tortures that torture the worst has abated the terrible torture of thirst. For the naphthaline river of passion accursed, I have drank of a water that quenches all thirst, of a water that flows with a lullaby sound from a spring, but a very few feet underground, from a cavern not very far down underground. And let it never be foolishly said that my room, it is gloomy and narrow, my bed, for a man never slept in a different bed, and to sleep, you must slumber in just such a bed. My tantalized spirit, here blandly reposes, forgetting or never regretting its roses, its old agitations of myrtles and roses. For now, while so quietly lying, it fancies a holier odor about it of pansies, a rosemary odor commingled with pansies, with rue and the beautiful Puritan pansies. And so it lies happily, bathing in many a dream of the truth and the beauty of Annie, drowned in a bath of the tresses of Annie. She tenderly kissed me. She fondly caressed, and then I fell gently to sleep on her breast, deeply to sleep from the heaven of her breast. When the light was extinguished, she covered me warm, and she prayed to the angels to keep me from harm, to the Queen of the angels to shield me from harm. And I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love, that you fancy me dead. And I rest so contentedly now in my bed with her love at my breast, that you fancy me dead. That you shudder to look at me, thinking me dead. But my heart, it is brighter than all of the many stars in the sky, for it sparkles with Annie. It glows with the light of the love of my Annie, with the thought of the light of the eyes of my Annie.
This is Dreamland. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have reached these lands but newly, from an ultimate dim Thule, from a wild, weird clime that lieth sublime, out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and Titan woods, with forms that no man can discover for the tears that drip all over, mountains toppling evermore into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire, lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their still waters, still and chilly, with the snows of the lulling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their sad waters, sad and chilly, with the snows of the lulling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. But the gray woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp, by the dismal tarns and pools where dwell the ghouls, by each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy, there the traveler meets aghast, sheeted memories of the past, shrouded forms that start and sigh as they pass the wanderer by, white-robed forms of friends long given in agony to earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis an El Dorado. But the traveler traveling through it may not, dare not openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. So wills its king, who hath forbid the uplifting of the fringed lid, and thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have wandered home but newly from this ultimate dim Thule.
Dreams by Edgar Allan Poe. Oh, that my young life were a lasting dream, my spirit not awakening till the beam of an eternity should bring the morrow. Yes, though that long dream were of hopeless sorrow, 'twere better than the cold reality of waking life. To him whose heart must be, and hath been still, upon the lovely earth, a chaos of deep passion from his birth. But should it be that dream eternally continuing, as dreams have been to me in my young boyhood, should it thus be given, 'twere folly still to hope for higher heaven. For I have reveled when the sun was bright in the summer sky, in dreams of living light and loveliness, have left my very heart in climes of mine imagining, apart from mine own home, with beings that have been of mine own thought. What more could I have seen? 'Twas once, and only once, and the wild hour from my remembrance shall not pass. Some power or spell had bound me. 'Twas the chilly wind came on me in the night and left behind its image on my spirit. Or the moon shone on my slumbers in her lofty noon too coldly. Or the stars. Howe'er it was, that dream was as that night wind. Let it pass. I have been happy, though but in a dream. I have been happy, and I love the theme, dreams in their vivid coloring of life, as in that fleeting, shadowy, misty strife of semblance with reality, which brings to the delirious eye more lovely things of paradise and love and all our own than young hope in his sunniest hour hath known.
The Conqueror Worm. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng, bewinged, bedight, in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes, in the form of God on high, mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they, who come and go at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings the invisible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the self-same spot, and much of madness and more of sin and horror the soul of the plot. But see amid the mimic rout a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that writhes from out the scenic solitude. It writhes with mortal pangs, the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out, out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the Conqueror Worm.
Yay. I love Poe, if you couldn't figure that out. Anyhow, so I have Poe behind me, you know, got him everywhere. I have little Poes, right? So speaking of, Christy is in first place with 1 point so far, but we've got more questions to go. So here we go. Contrary to his story, The Black Cat, Poe adored animals, and he had his own black cat, and they named that cat, or his kitty, what? Anyone in chat? Jim's going to monitor chat for me so you can stop looking at my big face, right? Christy Bagley is point number 2. Katerina, right? Yay. So, how did Poe die? And in our homepage, tempestproductions.org, www.tempestproductions.org, we have a number of little virtual escape rooms and where you can read some of these poems. And there's also a little scavenger room where you click on things and you get to hear some wonderful interpretations of Poe, from The Simpsons, The Raven, up through various ones. And what do we have there? It is unclear. Yes, it is a mystery. No one actually knows how he died, right? So she has moved up to 3 points now. Woo! Coming up next, The Black Cat with Bruce, A Dream Within a Dream with Elizabeth, and Silence with Stephanie and Laura. Enjoy.
The Black Cat. Mad am I not, and very surely I do not dream, but tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me, yet I will not attempt to expound them. One night as I sat, half stupefied in a den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object. It was a black cat, very large one, fully as large as our deceased cat Pluto, and closely resembling in every respect but one. Pluto had not a single white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, almost indefinite splotch of white covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose and purred loudly and rubbed against my hand and appeared delighted with my notice. This then was the very creature of which I was in search. When I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. It's just the reverse of what I had anticipated. I know not how or why it was, but by slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty, preventing me from physically abusing it. And what added no doubt to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like our cat Pluto, it had also been deprived of one of its eyes. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity that it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I rose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fasten its long and sharp claws in my dress, clamber in this manner to my breast. Ah! At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from so doing. Partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, and let me confess this at once, by absolute dread of the beast. One day I noticed that on his breast was now the representation of an object that I shudder to name, and for this above all I loathed and dreaded and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say that the image of a hideous, ghastly thing of the gallows, a mournful and terrible engine of horror and of crime, of agony and of death. I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face and its vast weight and incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual temper increased a hatred of all things, of all mankind, while from the sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outbursts of a fury to which I now blindly abandon myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat, of course, followed me down the steep stairs and, nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me to anger. Uplifting an axe, I aimed a blow at the animal, but the blow was arrested by the hand of my wife. Goaded by this interference into a rage more than demoniacal, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe into her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith and with entire deliberation to the task of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house either by day or by night without the risk of being observed. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. I deliberated about casting it in the well in the yard or packing it in a box as if merchandise with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient than any of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. In one of the walls was a projection caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the rest of the cellar. I had no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation, I was not deceived. And with this, I very carefully went over the new brickwork. I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed, and the rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. My next step was to look for the beast that had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. But it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger and forbore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the deep, the blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. And thus, for one night at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul. Days passed, and still my tormentor came not. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little, and some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered, and I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of the police came very unexpectedly into the house and proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatsoever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored, and at length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar, and I quivered not in a muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end. I folded my arms upon my bosom, and I rode easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. But me and my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say it, but one word by way of triumph to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. Gentlemen, I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, I delight to have allayed your suspicions, and I wish you all health. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house. I may say an excellently well-constructed house. These walls, are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane which I held in my hand upon that very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the ghastly corpse of the wife of my bosom. May God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, by a cry at first muffled and broken like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a wailing, a shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony and of the demons that exult in the damnation. With my own thoughts, it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall, and I watched for one instant the party upon the stairs remain motionless, for extremity of terror and awe. In the next instant, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall, which fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red extended mouth and a solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb.
A dream within a dream. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the piteous wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream?
Silence, a fable. Listen to me, said the demon, as he placed his hand upon my head. There is a spot upon this accursed earth which thou hast never yet beheld, and if by any chance thou hast beheld it, it must have been in one of those vigorous dreams which come upon the brain of the sleeper who hath lain down to sleep among the forbidden sunbeams. The region of which I speak is a dreary region, and there is no quiet there, nor silence.
It was night, and the rain fell, and falling it was rain, but having fallen, it was blood. And I stood in the tall lilies, and the rain fell upon my head, and the lilies sighed one unto the other in the solemnity of their desolation.
And all at once the moon arose through the thin ghastly mist, and was crimson in color. And mine eyes fell upon a huge gray rock which stood by the shore of the river. Upon its front were characters engraven in the stone, but I could not decipher them. As I turned to walk away, the moon shone with a fuller red, so I turned and looked again upon the rock and upon the characters, and the characters were Desolation, desolation.
And I looked upwards, and there stood a man upon the summit of the rock, and I hid myself among the water lilies that I might discover the actions of the man. And the man was tall and stately in form, and the outlines of his figure were indistinct, but his features were the features of a deity, for the mantle of the night, and of the mist, and of the moon, and of the dew had left uncovered the features of his face. And his brow was lofty with thought, and his eye wild with care, and in the few furrows upon his cheek I read the fables of sorrow and weariness and disgust with mankind, and a longing after solitude.
And I lay close within my covert and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock.
Then I cursed the elements with the curse of tumult, and a frightful tempest gathered in the heaven where before there had been no wind. And the heaven became livid with the violence of the tempest, and the rain beat upon the head of the man, and the floods of the river came down, and the river was tormented into foam, and the forest crumbled before the wind, and the thunder rolled, and the lightning fell, and the rock rocked to its foundation. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock.
Then I grew angry and cursed with the curse of silence, the river and the lilies and the wind and the forest and the heaven, and they became accursed and were still. And the moon ceased to totter up its pathway to heaven, and the thunder died away, and the lightning did not flash, and the clouds hung motionless, and the waters sunk to their level and remained, and the trees ceased to rock, and the water lilies sighed no more, and the murmur was heard no longer from among them, nor any shadow of sound throughout the vast, illimitable desert. And I looked upon the characters of the rock, and they were changed. And the characters were Silence, silence.
and mine eyes fell upon the countenance of the man, and his countenance was wan with terror. And hurriedly he raised his head from his hand and stood forth upon the rock and listened. But there was no voice throughout the vast, illimitable desert, and the characters upon the rock were silence. And the man shuddered and turned his face away and fled afar off in haste, so that I beheld him no more.
And as the demon made an end of his story, he fell back within the cavity of the tomb and laughed. And I could not laugh with the demon, and he cursed me because I could not laugh. And the lynx which dwelleth forever in the tomb came out therefrom, and lay down at the feet of the demon, and looked him steadily in the face.
Ours is a world of words. Quiet we call silence, which is the merest word of all.
Lovely work, everyone. It is time for a little bit more Poe trivia. So, everyone, listen up. What branch of the service did Poe join? We'll be monitoring Facebook and the chat here. What branch of the service did Poe join? Win valuable prizes like the Edgar Allan Poe bandages. Quoth the Raven, no more sores. Roger is first to get it. Very good. The correct answer is Army. So very good, Roger. Cynthia is keeping track here. So we'll keep things rolling here. Wonderful evening of Poe-related goodness. And coming up next, we're going to have Alone, read by Kathy, The City in the Sea by Mike, and Imp of the Perverse, read by Joanne. Thank you for tuning in with us this evening.
Alone. From childhood's hour, I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still, from the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm, and the cloud that took the form when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view.
The City in the Sea. Lo, Death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone. Far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. Their shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers, and tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours. Around by lifting winds forgot, resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of that town, but light from out the lurid sea streams up the turrets silently, gleams in the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon-like walls, up shadowy long-forgotten bowers of sculptured ivy and stone flowers, up many and many a marvelous shrine whose wreathed friezes intertwine, the veal, the violet, and the vine.
resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. So blend the turrets and shadows there that all seem pendulous in the air, while from a proud tower in the town, death looks gigantically down. There open fanes and gaping graves yawn level with the luminous waves, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye, not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, for no ripples curl, alas, along that wilderness of glass. No swellings tell that winds may be upon some far-off happier sea. No heavings hint that winds have been on seas less hideously serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is a movement there, as if the towers had thrust aside in sinking slightly the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours are breathing faint and low, and when, amid no earthly moans, down that town shall settle hence, and hell, rising from 1,000 thrones, shall do it reverence.
The imp of the perverse. It is impossible that any deed could have been wrought with a more thorough deliberation. For weeks, for months, I pondered upon the means of the murder. I rejected 1,000 schemes because their accomplishment involved a chance of detection. At length, in reading some French memoirs, I found an account of a nearly fatal illness brought about through the agency of a candle accidentally poisoned. The idea struck my fancy at once. I knew my victim's habit of reading in bed. I knew, too, that his apartment was narrow and ill-ventilated. Oh, but I need not vex you with impertinent details. I need not describe the easy artifices by which I substituted in his bedroom candle stand a wax light of my own making for the one which I there found. The next morning, he was discovered dead in his bed, and the coroner's verdict was death by visitation of God. Having inherited his estate, all went well with me for years. The idea of detection never once entered my brain. Of the remains of the fatal taper, I had myself carefully disposed. I'd left no shadow of a clue by which it would be possible to convict, or even to suspect me of the crime. It is inconceivable how rich a sentiment of satisfaction arose in my bosom as I reflected upon my absolute security. For a very long period of time, I was accustomed to revel in this sentiment. It afforded me more real delight than all the mere worldly advantages accruing from my sin. But there arrived at length an epoch from which the pleasurable feeling grew by scarcely perceptible gradations into a haunting and harassing thought. It harassed because it haunted. I could scarcely get rid of it for an instant. It is quite a common thing to be thus annoyed with the ringing in our ears, or rather in our memories, of the burden of some ordinary song or some unimpressive snatches from an opera. Nor will we be the less tormented if the song in itself be good or the opera air meritorious. In this manner, at last, I would perpetually catch myself pondering upon my security and repeating in a low undertone the phrase, "I am safe." One day, while sauntering along the streets, I arrested myself in the act of murmuring, half aloud, these customary syllables. In a fit of petulance, I remodeled them thus. I am safe. I am safe. Yes, if I be not fool enough to make open confession. No sooner had I spoken these words than I felt an icy chill creep to my heart. Now, my own casual self-suggestion that I might possibly be fool enough to confess the murder of which I'd been guilty confronted me, as if the very ghost of him whom I had murdered had beckoned me on to death. At first, I made an effort to shake off this nightmare of the soul. I walked vigorously, faster, still faster. At length, I ran. I felt a maddening desire to shriek aloud. Every succeeding wave of thought overwhelmed me with new terror. For alas, I too well understood that to think in my situation was to be lost. I still quickened my pace. I bounded like a madman through the crowded thoroughfares. At length, the populace took the alarm and pursued me. I felt then the consummation of my fate. Could I have torn out my tongue, I would have done it, but a rough voice resounded in my ears. A rougher grasp seized me by the shoulder. I turned, I gasped for breath. For a moment, I experienced all the pangs of suffocation. I became blind and deaf and giddy. Then some invisible fiend struck me with his broad palm upon the back. The long imprisoned secret burst forth from my soul. It will be said, I am aware, that we persist in acts because we feel we should not persist in them. That single thought is enough. The impulse increases to a wish, the wish to a desire, the desire to an uncontrollable longing, and the longing to the deep regret and mortification of the speaker, and in defiance of all consequences, is indulged. And because our reason violently deters us from the brink, therefore do we the most impetuously approach it. There is no passion in nature so demoniacally impatient as that of him who, shuddering upon the edge of a precipice, thus meditates a plunge. They say that I spoke with distinct enunciation, but with marked emphasis and passionate hurry, as if in dread of interruption before concluding the brief but pregnant sentences that consigned me to the hangman and to hell. Having related all that was necessary for the fullest judicial conviction, I fell prostrate in a swoon. Examine these similar actions as we will, we shall find them resulting solely from the spirit of the perverse. We perpetuate them because we feel that we should not. Beyond or behind this, there is no intelligible principle. And we might indeed deem this perverseness a direct instigation of the archfiend, were it not occasionally known to operate in furtherance of good. But why shall I say more? Today I wear these chains and I am here. Tomorrow I shall be fetterless. But where?
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. So we are back for more Poe trivia. Of course, we have Poe laying cards, we have Poe bandages, and Poe finger puppet that is also magnetic. What more could you want? Here's the first question. We're going to do two questions this time around. Who was Poe's childhood hero? We'll be monitoring chat both through Zoom and through Facebook. Who was Poe's childhood hero? Oh, once again, Christy right on top of this. Christy Bagley with poet Lord Byron. Absolutely correct. And we have one more. We have one more. Let's see. What famous contemporary author completed a Poe manuscript and titled it The Fabled Night House at Vina del Mar? Famous contemporary author completed a Poe manuscript and titled it The Fabled Night House at Vina del Mar. Again, valuable prizes. Valuable. Oh, good guess, but a little more contemporary. Of course, obviously, you can't see the answers we're getting in chat. But contemporary author, so I believe still living today. I could be wrong about that, but living very recently. Our fact-checking team, I believe, is looking that up. Oh, good guess, but no, it was not Michael
He's
Crichton.
currently 82 years old.
Oh, so the author is indeed still living and 82 years old, if that helps. Fabled Night House at Vina del Mar. How long do we want to hold out? Oh, actually, excellent point, Roger. Yeah, contemporary as in around today, not as in one of Poe's contemporaries. Anyone on Facebook have it? We're going to wrap this one up? All right. Well, the answer is actually Joyce Carol Oates. Joyce Carol Oates completing Poe manuscript, titling it The Fabled Night House at Vina del Mar. So are we going to do one more or just get back to the program? We're gonna continue on with the programming then. And coming up next, we're going to have The Oval Portrait, read by Laura Riley, El Dorado, read by Bruce, and The Cask of Amontillado. Amontillado. I've made fun of that so many times that I can't say it properly. So take it away.
The Oval Portrait. The chateau to which my valet had ventured to make forcible entrance rather than permit me in my desperately wounded condition to pass a night in the open air was one of those piles of commingling gloom and grandeur, which, to all appearances, it had been temporarily and very lately abandoned. We established ourselves in one of the smallest apartments in a remote turret of the building. Its decorations were rich, yet tattered and antique. Its walls were hung with an unusually great number of very spirited modern paintings in frames of rich golden arabesque. In these paintings, my incipient delirium perhaps had caused me to take great interest, so that I bade Pedro to light the candelabrum which stood by the head of my bed, and to throw open wide the curtains of black velvet which enveloped the bed itself. I wished all this done that I might resign myself, if not to sleep, at least to the contemplation of those pictures and the perusal of a small volume which had been found upon the pillow, and which purported to describe them. Long I read, and devotedly I gazed. The hours flew, and deep midnight came. The position of the candelabrum displeased me. I placed it so as to throw its rays more fully upon the book, but the rays of the candles now fell within a niche of the room, which had been thrown into a deep shade by one of the bedposts. Thus I saw in vivid light a picture unnoticed before. It was the portrait of a young girl, just into womanhood. The canvas seemed to dissipate the dreamy stupor and startle me at once into waking life. The portrait, I have already said, was that of a young girl. It was a mere head and shoulders, done in a vignette manner. The arms and even the ends of her radiant hair melted imperceptibly into the vague yet deep shadow which formed the background of the whole. The frame was oval, richly gilded and filigreed. As a thing of art, nothing could be more admirable than the painting itself. But neither the execution of the work nor the immortal beauty of the countenance had so suddenly and so vehemently moved me. My fancy had mistaken the head for that of a living person. I saw at once that the peculiarities of the design, of the vignetting, and of the frame, it must have instantly dispelled such an idea. I remained for an hour, perhaps, with my vision riveted upon the portrait. At length, satisfied with the true secret of its effect, I fell back within the bed. I'd found the spell of the picture in the absolute lifelikeness of the expression, which, at first startling, finally confounded, subdued, and appalled me. I sought eagerly the volume which discussed the paintings and their histories. Turning to the number which designated the oval portrait, I there read a vague and quaint words which follow. She was a maiden of rarest beauty, and not more lovely than full of glee. And evil was the hour when she saw and loved and wedded the painter. He, passionate, studious, austere, and having already a bride in his art. She, all light and smiles, and frolicsome as a young fawn, loving and cherishing all things, hating only the art which was her rival, dreading only the palette and the brushes, and the other untoward instruments which deprived her of the countenance of her lover. It was thus a terrible thing for this lady to hear the painter speak of his desire to portray even his young bride. But she was obedient, and sat meekly for many weeks in the dark, high turret chamber. But the painter took glory in his work, which went on from hour to hour, and from day to day. And he was passionate and wild and a moody man, who became lost in revelries, so that he would not see that the light which fell so ghastly in the lone turret withered the spirits of his bride, who pined visibly to all but him. Yet she smiled on, and still on, uncomplainingly, because she saw that the painter took a fervid, burning pleasure in his task, and wrought day and night to depict her who loved him so. Some who beheld the portrait spoke of its resemblance in low words as a mighty marvel. But at length, as the labor drew near its conclusion, there were admitted none into the turret, for the painter had grown wild with the ardor of his work, and turned his eyes from the canvas merely even to regard the countenance of his wife, and he would not see that the tints which he had spread upon the canvas were drawn from her cheeks, or of she who sat beside him. And when many weeks had passed, and but little remained to do, save one brush upon the mouth, one tint upon the eye, the spirit of the lady again flickered up as a flame within the socket of a lamp, and then the brush was given, and then the tint was placed, and for one moment the painter stood entranced by the work which he had wrought. But in the next he gazed, and he grew very pallid, and crying in a loud voice, "This is indeed life itself," turned suddenly to regard his beloved. She was dead.
El Dorado. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight in sunshine and in shadow had journeyed long, singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. "Shadow," said he, "where can it be, this land of El Dorado?" "Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow. Ride, boldly ride," the shade replied, "if you seek for El Dorado."
The Cask of Amontillado. We continued in search of the Amontillado. Fortunato's gait was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode, and when he turned towards me, he looked into my eyes with two filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of his intoxication. We passed through low arches, and descending again arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human bones, piled to the vault overhead in the fashion of the catacombs of Paris. Within the wall, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no special use, merely the interval between 2 colossal supports of the roof and backed by one circumscribing wall of solid granite. He stepped unsteadily forward. I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. It was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. "The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend.
True, I replied, the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself by uncovering a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that my friend's intoxication had in great measure worn off. There was a low, moaning cry from the depth of the recess, then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down on the bone. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed, and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly level with my breast. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated, I trembled, placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacomb, and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed, I aided, I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th, and there remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. There came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of my friend. A very good joke indeed, and an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo over our wine. Oh, yes, said I, the Amontillado. Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be waiting us at the palazzo? Let us be gone. Yes, let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, for the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, Fortunato? No answer. I called again, Fortunato! No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells of his cap. I forced the last stone into its position and plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the last half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. I drink to the buried that repose around us, and to your long life. In pace requiescat.
I mean, come on, who out there hasn't considered walling up someone they know, right? So, a couple more questions. Here we go. I said I would talk about him being an athlete. So, in his early years, he excelled at 2 sports in particular that he won awards for. And there were 3 others that he was well known for that he excelled at. So there's 5 options out there. Anybody have any guess? Any guesses? Or maybe you know. Lacrosse is a good guess, not quite. Running is one of them. Track would have worked. Running was one. Not football that I know of. Anybody else going to take a guess out there? So I got 1 point. Going to Christy. Any other guesses out there? Think about the time. Rowing, boxing. So those are the 3 that he was really, really good at. But he actually had the record for swimming 6 miles up tide in the James River. He held that record for quite some time. And he was a champion long jumper. All right, last one. Fairly easy question. Let's see, everybody get their fingers on their keyboards, right? In 1845, Poe became a household name. So this is what does it for him, right? He gets instant success, becomes like our first starving artist, basically, but instant success with what piece? And it is The Raven. Very good. So up next is The Lake, Shadow, and an excerpt from Fall of the House of Usher with Elizabeth, Joanne, and John.
The Lake. In spring of youth it was my lot to haunt the wide earth, a spot the which I could not love the less, so lovely was the loneliness of a wild lake, with black rock bound and the tall pines that towered round. But when the night had thrown her pall upon that spot as upon all, and the mystic wind by murmuring in melody, then, I would awake to the terror of the lone lake. Yet the terror was not fright, but a tremulous delight, a feeling not the jeweled mind could touch or bribe me to define, nor love, although the love were thine. Death where it was in that poisonous wave, and in that gulf a fitting grave for him could thence the solace bring to his lone imagining, whose solitary soul could make an Eden of that dim lake.
Shadow. The year had been a year of terror, and of feelings more intense than terror, for which there is no name upon the earth. For many prodigies and signs had taken place, and far and wide, over sea and land, the black wings of the pestilence were spread abroad. To those nevertheless cunning in the stars, it was not unknown that the heavens wore an aspect of ill. And to me, among others, it was evident that now had arrived the alternation of that 794th year when the peculiar spirit of the skies made itself manifest. Not only in the physical orb of the earth, but in the souls, imaginations, and meditations of mankind. Within the walls of a noble hall, we sat, at night, a company of 7. And to our chamber there was no entrance save by a lofty door of brass, and the door, being of rare workmanship, was fastened from within. Black draperies likewise in the gloomy room shut out from our view the moon, the lurid stars, and the peopleless streets, but not the boding and the memory of evil. They would not be so excluded. There were things around us and about of which I can render no distinct account. Things material and spiritual, heaviness in the atmosphere, a sense of suffocation, anxiety, and above all, that terrible state of existence when the senses are keenly living and awake, and meanwhile the powers of thought lie dormant. A dead weight hung upon us. It hung upon our limbs, upon the household furniture, upon the goblets in which we drank. All things were depressed and borne down thereby. all things save only the flames of the 7 lamps which illumined our revel. Uprearing themselves in tall, slender lines of light, they thus remained burning, all pallid and motionless. And in the mirror which their luster formed upon the round table of ebony at which we sat, each of us beheld the pallor of his own countenance, the unquiet glare in the downcast eyes of his companions. Yet we laughed and were merry in our proper way, which was hysterical, and sang the songs of Anacreon, which are madness, and drank deeply, although the purple wine reminded us of blood. For there was yet another tenant of our chamber. Dead, and at full length he lay, enshrouded. The genius and the demon of the scene. Alas, he bore no portion in our mirth, save that his countenance, distorted with the plague, and his eyes, in which death had but half extinguished the fire of the pestilence, seemed to take such interest in our merriment, as the dead may happily take in the merriment of those who are about to die. But although I felt that the eyes of the departed were upon me, still I forced myself not to perceive the bitterness of their expression, and gazing down steadily into the depths of the ebony mirror, sang with a loud and sonorous voice. But gradually my songs, they ceased, and their echoes, rolling afar off among the sable draperies of the chamber, became weak and undistinguishable, and so faded away. And lo, from among those sable draperies where the sounds of the song departed, there came forth a dark and undefined shadow, a shadow such as the moon when low in heaven might fashion from the figure of a man. It was the shadow neither of man, nor of God, nor of any familiar thing. And quivering a while among the draperies of the room, and at length it rested in full view upon the surface of the door of brass. The shadow was vague and formless and indefinite, and was the shadow neither of man, nor of God, nor of any familiar thing. And the shadow rested upon the brazen doorway, and under the arch of the entablature of the door, moved not, or spoke any word, but there became stationary and remained. And the door whereupon the shadow rested was, if I remember aright, over against the feet of the young man enshrouded. But we, the 7 there assembled, having seen the shadow as it came out from among the draperies, dared not steadily behold it, but cast down our eyes and gazed continually into the depths of the mirror of ebony. And at length I, speaking some low words, demanded of the shadow its dwelling and its appellation. And the shadow answered, I am shadow. And then did we, the 7, start from our seats in horror and stand trembling and shuddering and aghast. For the tones in the voice of the shadow were not the tones of any one being, but a multitude of beings, and varying in their cadences from syllable to syllable, fell duskly upon our ears in the well-remembered and familiar accents of many thousand departed friends. Ye who read are still among the living, but I who write shall have long since gone my way into the region of shadows. For indeed strange things shall happen, and secret things be known, and when seen there will be some to disbelieve and some to doubt, and yet a few who will find much to ponder upon. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow.
The fall of the House of Usher. It was a dull, dark, and soundless day when I found myself within the view of the melancholy House of Usher. There was an iciness, a sinking, a sickening of the heart, What was it? What was it that so unnerved me in the contemplation of the House of Usher? Its proprietor, Roderick Usher, had been one of my companions in childhood, but many years had elapsed since our last meeting. A letter, however, had lately reached me, a letter from him. He spoke of an acute bodily illness, a mental disorder which oppressed him, and of an earnest desire to see me. I could not say no. I had learned a very remarkable fact, that the entire family lay in a direct line of descent. And it was this deficiency, this undeviating transmission from sire to son, that the title of the estate, House of Usher, meant both the family and the family mansion. When I arrived, I entered into a Gothic archway of the hall, and the valet ushered me to the presence of his master. Usher rose from a sofa, greeted me with the vivacious warmth which had so much in it. I at first thought it was an overdone cordiality. However, his countenance convinced me he was perfectly sincere. He sat down, and for some moments he spoke not. Surely, man had never before so terribly altered as had Roderick Usher. He had a ghastly pallor of the skin, and his silken hair had been suffered to grow all unheeded, and its wild gossamer, it floated rather than fell about the face. I could not connect its arabesque expression with any idea of a simple humanity. And when he spoke, he was incoherent. He possessed an excessive nervous agitation. His voice, it varied rapidly from a tremulous indecision to energetic concision, and abrupt, weighty, unhurried, and hollow-sounding enunciation. He spoke of the objects of my visit and the nature of his malady. I need your help to find a remedy. I suffer from a morbid acuteness and acuteness of the senses. I can wear only garments of a certain texture. The odours of all flowers are oppressive. My eyes are tortured by even a faint light, and sounds. Only the sounds from stringed instruments do not horrify me. I shall perish. I must perish in this deplorable folly. I dread the events of the future, not in themselves, but in their results. I have no abhorrence of danger, except in its absolute effect, in terror. In this unnerved, in this pitiable condition, I feel that the period will sooner or later arrive, when I must abandon life and reason together, in some struggle with a grim phantasm, fear. He admitted that most of his gloom could be traced to the severe and long-continued illness of his tenderly beloved sister, Lady Madeline. She was his sole companion for long years, his last and only relative on earth. The deceased will leave me, the last of the ancient race of the Ushers. Lady Madeline's cataleptic condition had long baffled her physicians, and on the evening I arrived, she succumbed to the prostrating power of her destroyer and took to her bed. And I learned that the glimpse I had obtained of her would thus probably be the last, but that lady, at least, while living, would be seen no more. For several days we did not mention Lady Madeline. I busied in earnest endeavors to alleviate the melancholy of my friend. We painted and read together. I listened to his wild improvisations on his guitar. I can't stop them from forever ringing in my ears. And one evening he informed me that Lady Madeline had died. He said he intended to preserve her corpse for a fortnight in one of the vaults within the main walls of the building. I did not impose, since he said he did not want her corpse to be disturbed, so that her medical men could study her unusual malady. It seemed like a harmless precaution. Usher requested me to aid him in the arrangements for the temporary entombment, and the body having been coffined, we two alone bore it to its rest. The vault in which we placed it was small, damp, and entirely without light, and it's lying at great depth, immediately beneath that portion of the building in which was my own sleeping apartment. Before leaving the lady, we partially turned aside the lid of her coffin and looked upon her face. It was then that I saw there was a striking similitude between the brother and sister. And finally, he admitted that he and the deceased were twins. There was a mockery of a faint blush upon her bosom and her face. She possessed a suspiciously lingering smile upon her lip, which is so terrible in death. Days passed. An odd change came over the mental disorder of my friend. His ordinary manner vanished. His ordinary occupations neglected or forgotten. He roamed from chamber to chamber, and his pallor became a more ghastly hue. The luminousness of his eye had utterly gone out. A tremulous quaver habitually characterized his voice. It appeared as if he was keeping an oppressive secret, as if he had heard some imaginary sounds, as if he were going mad. I began to be afraid. That night, upon retiring to bed late, I experienced the full power of such feelings. Sleep came not near my couch, and while the hours waned and waned away, I struggled to reason of nervousness, but my efforts were fruitless. A storm had begun to surround the house, and the howling wind disturbed me. An irrepressible tremor gradually pervaded over me. And through the pauses of the storm, I knew not why, I thought I heard certain low and indefinite sounds at long intervals. I knew not whence. I threw on my clothes and endeavored to calm myself by pacing rapidly to and fro through the apartment. I left, and I found Usher rambling. "Have you not seen it yet? Have you not then seen it? But stay, you shall." "Oh," I said, "you must not, you shall not behold this. These appearances which bewilder you are merely electrical phenomena, not uncommon. Look, I will read, and you shall listen, and so we will pass away this terrible night together." I took up the volume of the Mad Tryst of Sir Lancelot Canning. I tried to say it was his favorite of his, as I indulged a vague hope that by reading him the story, the hypochondriac might find relief. I read from the book. "Ethelred, who was by nature of a doughty heart, and who was now mighty withal, uplifted his mace outright, and with blows he so cracked and ripped and tore all asunder, and then with his mace he struck upon the head of the dragon, which fell before him. The dragon gave up his pasty breath with a shriek so horrid and harsh, and withal so piercing." Yeah. I was by no means certain that he'd noticed the sounds that were coming from within the mansion, although a strange alteration had taken place in his demeanor. His lips trembled, his head dropped upon his breast, yet I knew that he was not asleep from the wide and rigid opening of the eye. He rocked from side to side with a gentle yet constant and uniform sway. And then came a mighty, great and terrible ringing sound. And then with a terrible fear on his face, Usher began to speak. "Not heard you say? Yes, I hear it, and I've heard it. Long, many minutes, many hours, many days have I heard it. Yet I dared not, oh, pity me, I dared not speak. We have put her living in the tomb. I now tell you that I heard her first feeble movements in the hollow coffin. I heard them many, many days ago, yet I dared not speak. Now tonight, Ethelred, the breaking of the hermit's door and the death cry of the dragon, say rather the rending of her coffin and the grazing of the iron hinges on her prison and her struggles within the coppered archway of the vault. Will she not be here anon? Is she not hurrying to upbraid me for my haste? Have I not heard her footsteps on the stair? Do I not distinguish that heavy and horrible beating of her heart? Madman, madman, I tell you now, she stands without that door. Suddenly, a huge antique panel drew slowly back, and there did stand the lofty and enshrouded figure of the Lady Madeline of Usher. There was blood upon her white robes, and the evidence of some bitter struggle upon every portion of her emaciated frame. And for a moment she remained trembling, reeling to and fro. Then, with a low, moaning cry, she fell then heavily inward upon her brother, and in her violent and now final death agonies bore him to the floor as a corpse and a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. I fled as quickly as possible. I found myself crossing the old causeway. Then I stopped and looked back. While I gazed back, a fissure on the building rapidly widened, and the entire orb of the satellite burst at once upon my sight. The mighty walls rushed asunder. There was a long, tumultuous shouting sound, like the voice of 1,000 waters and 1,000 voices of the past dead. The deep, dark waters of the Tarn closed silently over the fragments of the house of Usher.
Cynthia, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, John.
First time tonight for that, though.
Someone asked the company to come on screen with us. So start popping in. And one of the best things about going virtual is that we can bring together our lives from all over the country. And we are represented tonight by New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. As soon as they join us, they can wave. The New Jerseyans can wave. There's, right? We also have...
What state are you waving for?
What state should I wave for today? We have some people from Pennsylvania. And we are represented from Virginia today. And LA, she's visiting family in Virginia. And tomorrow night, we will be adding in New Orleans as Randy joins us. Is he still out there or did he pop in and out? So he'll be joining us tomorrow night. We have a new puppet film from Adam Swartz Puppets tomorrow. And we also have a brand new piece that Van Dance will be unveiling, a new work that she's beginning to look at for El Dorado. So we have some new pieces coming up and other things like that. In celebration of All Hallows Eve, we'll be doing a bit of live streaming and a bit of video recording throughout the day and just popping out some of the recordings that we have. We have about 4 different actors and artists reading The Telltale Heart. Jim has got Poe beside me. Stephanie's already in the Amontillado. Okay. And we're going to end the evening with a community read, which means anyone else who is out there, would you like to read The Raven with us and help us take it home, take Poe home for the evening? I'm going to turn on your mics. I'm going to promote all of you to panelists. So if you would like to join us, you can. You don't have to. as you watch my eyes do this. I always say you can tell people's age by the way they have to make this all work.
Read the small print.
Read the small print. I think everybody has been promoted. If you'd like to join us up here, or if you went away.
I'm not doing that.
Okay, so anyone going to join us? All right, my people on the screen. There's 10 of you? Is that correct then? Because I can't count. Yes. So
Count 16.
are there 16 people up there? Why am I not seeing everybody?
You, me, John, Stephanie, Laura, Kathy, Laura Riley, Elizabeth, Bruce, Mike, Joanne Smith, Chris, Jeff, Joe, and Roger.
Well, then you get to see everybody. Oh, there we have a few. Okay. There we go. So how many? 16? Did you count again? All right.
We're at 15 now. And Roger says he made the first few lines without reading.
Okay. And I'm going to share the screen and bring it up anyhow. So Roger, you will be voice 1. There we go. Let's go.
Cynthia, can I say goodnight?
Yes, you can, John.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. You look good.
Thank you, John.
All right. Joe says, don't count her in. Okay.
Party pooper.
I'll kick her back over to the side. There we go. Roger's out there with us. Jeff, you going to read? Chris?
Did someone just say my name?
I did. Are you going to read with us?
Oh, yeah, sure. I didn't know this was a thing. And I was just listening in the background as I work.
Yes,
Yeah,
Kathy,
Fran.
you can be
It's totally a thing.
17.
Join
I've
us.
got 1 and I've got 17. Chris, you going to join us?
Chris, join us.
Can you all see my screen? So it's broken up a slight different bit. Somebody assign, Laura, you can see everybody. I can't anymore. Assign numbers. We've got a 1 and a 17.
Okay. How many? 17 voices?
There aren't 17.
There aren't 17 people.
13 now.
So 13 and then we'll double, but Kathy wants number 17. So she has to take a second number possibly.
Okay. Okay. So, Jim, you're 1. Elizabeth, you're 2.
No, I think Roger asked to be 1.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't paying attention and then you told me to do something. Okay. Roger's 1?
Yep.
Okay. Jim is 2.
Okay.
Elizabeth is 3. Mike is 4. Are you playing, Cynthia?
I don't need to.
You're 5. Stephanie's 6. Bruce is 7. Laura Riley is 8. Kathy is 9. Jeff is 10. Who else? Chris is 11. And I'll be 12.
All right, then we got to keep going. 13, 14, 15, 16. Kathy said she'd take 17.
Okay, let's give it to the new folks. Jeff, you can be 13. Chris, you can be 14. I am just randomly picking now. Elizabeth is, where am I? 15. Bruce, you're 16. Kathy, 17?
Yep.
Is that it? Sorry for people who only got 1.
And I think
What number I was. I hope
I don't know if I got 1 or 2.
you got 2, Chris. Did you remember what they are?
1 is 14. Was the other just 12?
No, I was 12.
11.
Okay.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know if you're 11. Are you 11? Yes, I think you're 11.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Write them down.
Roger was 1. Did we get 18?
What?
Roger, take 18 as well then. Is that okay?
I guess I see 18 and 1 are adjacent there.
Yeah, because then you get to finish it off.
Sounds good.
Can everybody see? Is that big enough?
Yeah, it's humongous.
Okay. All right, Roger, it's all yours to start us off.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, my chamber door.
Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Woo. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore.
Nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to the still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door."
And nothing more. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door."
Yep. Oh, it's me. Darkness there and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken and the stillness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore."
Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then where thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore."
Bruce, you're muted.
Which number am I at now?
Oh, you're good.
7?
One more time. "'Tis the wind and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with a mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door."
Perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, though," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore, tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore."
Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door.
With such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on a placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered. till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before.
And the bird said, "Nevermore," startled at the stillness broken by... Somebody's got their reply so aptly spoken. "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock in store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore."
Of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore
meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining, that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er.
She shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. "Wretch," I cried, "thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore."
Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate all yet undaunted, on this desert island enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore."
Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore."
Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend," I shrieked, upstarting. "Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thou soul hast spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door."
Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and a lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Thank you, everyone. You can talk amongst yourselves now.
Beautiful.
I love hearing group reads. It makes me happy. So, talk amongst yourselves or say
It's been a
goodnight.
while, Stephanie. I remember you from the David Harry groups.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
It's going back in time, eh, Mike, Laura?
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I never did any work there, but we came and saw you actually in a couple shows. So
Hey, who's that guy?
Hey.
Right up down there. I have to go check on the cat. He might
I
have.
think Joe has left us. So-
Jeff, have you been here the whole time? Jeff?
What? Yeah, I
time?
logged in, and I had some work done. I had some friends doing this, and I'm not one to miss any theater performances, but it turned into an impromptu theater performance.
That
Exciting.
was great. We're gonna do it again tomorrow night. You should come again.
I was at the children's show.
No, actually tonight was for young audiences, wasn't it? And then
Uh-huh.
tomorrow
Can't you tell?
Oh, I got them mixed up.
Tomorrow's the I don't know how it's going to differ. This is sort of a
It's different. Some different people with different poems. We'll group read Telltale Heart and The Raven, because why not?
Why
So
not?
anyone who's with us, we get them to read. We have a new
and-
puppet show too.
So another puppet.
I saw
We
that.
have- Yeah.
Did
So
it turn out
thanks.
okay, Kathy? Okay, good.
No, I like it.
I only saw a little piece of it, so I didn't get to see the whole thing yet.
You and Mike did a great job.
Yes, Mike and Laura read it. And we did
So,
the puppets.
anything bad is on us.
Ah,
I thought the puppet, our lead-in with the bells with the puppets was pretty awesome.
It's something. It is something.
It's a thing.
I listened to it so many times editing it that I kind of memorized everybody's like cadence when they're reading it. So I'm
Right.
sitting here watching it, going, Iron Bells!
That made me crack up so hard every time I did it. I just couldn't help myself.
That
I'll
was a
have
lot of
bells
fun.
flashbacks. Bells, 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 bells.
Sometimes
I
when
saw all of it, but I didn't see the blooper before. At first, I thought you were putting the same video at the start, and you were just going to put it on loop until whatever the next thing was supposed to happen.
I don't know if Laura knew I was gonna do that.
Oh, I did not know you were going to do that.
I didn't know she was going to do that either.
It was great,
I saw
though.
the blooper. I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I was like, why did you put it on the thing?
Because and it was funny when I watched it the first time, I was like, yay. And I was going to like turn it down. And then I'm like, wait, we're starting over.
Mhm.
And then there's Laura. Hi.
Oops. Too excited. Oh my God, the way you have to hold those puppets, like to get them on the screen and not be in the camera is painful sometimes. But I recommend it for anyone. I have lots of puppets.
Be a little harder to do that screen control with that finger puppet, though.
Oh yeah, finger puppets would be good. I have this little guy that Adam Swartz made.
I bet that's what he went to go get.
Oh yeah.
Jeff
Oh,
will
yeah.
have one too.
This is a baby Wigglefoof.
Yes.
I got mine too.
He's gotta get his.
Oh, Adam, I totally think you could sell these.
Okay, I will.
I feel like, they're so adorable. Very, very nice. Very nice.
Everybody
Jeff.
They're multiplying like tribbles.
Yes,
They're like
Yeah.
little
rainbow tribbles.
rainbow tribbles. They're adorable. I have mine right here. He sits with me every day when I work.
That's awesome.
I'm surprised the cats haven't stolen him yet, though, because they like to steal stuffed animals. Who left?
I think she's already gone.
Oh, don't people leave like they just disappear.
Yeah, that's the other part of Zoom.
I feel
Like,
bad. She was going
goodbye.
to say something, and I talked.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Cynthia, will this be, some of this be available like on the website afterwards for people to watch?
Yeah, so we'll edit some pieces down, but I've recorded every night.
I have some friends who couldn't come, but were interested in seeing our
And
shenanigans.
tonight it would not live stream at all tonight.
What do you mean?
So normally I hit it to stream on Facebook or on YouTube. We just change it. Sometimes I'll do it on our YouTube channel. Sometimes I'll do it on our Facebook page. The other night, for whatever reason, it streamed on my personal page as opposed to the Tempest page. But tonight it just kept spinning. And it said we were live streaming, but we weren't. Because that's when normally Elizabeth texts me and is like, people are commenting, you better get on there and comment. I'm like, I only have 2 hands.
Oh, okay. Well, that's too bad.
But it never made it out there tonight. Oh, well, but that's what I'll do. I'll watch party it. And we'll just keep playing with this kind of stuff.
Will you show it again on Tempest? Sort of like,
yeah.
Just be like, hey, okay, that's cool. Good.
So
awesome.
And Jeff and Chris and Roger want to read at some point and join us. Think about it.
Poe is a tradition. Do you have a favorite Poe? Roger, Jeff, Chris?
I guess not. I don't want to say the wrong answer and sound like a hack.
There's no wrong answer. Are you leaving, Joanne? Joanne's leaving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be talking.
So what's your favorite Poe, Jeff?
I like the one that JVJ read earlier. That was like more supernatural than I was expecting.
The House of Usher or?
Yeah, House of Usher.
House of Usher. I love the House of Usher.
Casket of armadillos.
There you go. I have an armadillo puppet.
How many people know that Amontillado?
Cask of armadillo? What?
Cask of armadillo. So someone needs to write a parody. Kathy Morrow.
Cask of
armadillo. That is perfect. Puppets. We need an armadillo puppet.
Yes, Amontillado does not start that abruptly. That's the kids' cut.
Yeah.
Well, and I hope you don't mind.
Pitch it to Sesame Street. They'll take it.
Yeah.
They'll do anything.
They'll do any kind of parody. They will absolutely do the cask of armadillos. And somebody's like, it ends with armadillos are just like you being used instead of bricks. So it's like,
oh my God, that would be
whatever the kid-friendly version of, for the love of God. Hey, we've got Penelope here.
Hey.
Hey, Penelope. I hope you don't mind, Cynthia. I added a couple pieces back from the original to that cut that I thought made it a little more clear. Like there were a couple pieces that I was like, it's weird. It's like stuff didn't, I wanted to add some back in. So I added just a couple sentences back.
Hard to believe.
Well, I just read whatever my husband gave me to read. So it's his fault. And the lovely brick background was contributed by Kathy and Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff, if you're ever interested in Tempest shenanigans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love this stuff. Any opportunities to read.
And it's, it's one of the few things we can do that's pretty low key without everybody going crazy. We're still trying to figure out some of the Zoom. We also have a StreamYard account, but that's more difficult when it's a larger cast. But yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of on and off either old time radio stuff. We're going to do some serial stuff where we'll
play
take
bingo.
5 nights. Huh?
We're going to play bingo. What's the second thing? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, who knows? Who knows what I was saying?
Say we were gonna do old time radio and then
Some serial stuff.
oh yeah.
And taking a look at, we have the new play series starting. So we're going to take a look at Jim Sampson's work all year under the new play series. So
Old time radio stuff.
Yeah, we've done several like in-person old time radio shows. And I think I mean we've done a number of them.
And the two we did during the festival was so much fun that it's just.
Is that like a live radio play? Like I've seen It's a Wonderful Life done as like a radio show on stage before.
We did like one of the ones that I really loved was the one we did in honor of we did like year themes, right? We did a 40s one and we did a, was it a 30s or a 50s or did we do both?
We did both.
I'm getting them all mixed up. We did one where we did a tribute to like the military, military veterans and soldiers, and that one was really, really beautiful. And we did a Christmas one. And we've done things like Buck Rogers. I'm trying to think of the stuff we've done now. In the 25th and a half century. Duck Dodgers, sorry.
Some spoon bending and ventriloquism on the radio Zoom.
That could be fun.
We did
interpretive swimming. We did synchronized swimming on the
Synchronized.
radio once. Oh my God, I forgot all about that. That is brilliant. I think I have videos on my camera of that. Or on my phone from that.
Must have fun.
Yeah, we've done we did a couple of a few of them with Elaine down at Webster's. It was like a dinner and it was like dinner at an old time radio show performance. And that was a lot of fun too.